Nah.
Welcome back to the stash. Now, if you're subbed to the channel, then you would have most likely have recently seen a certain few community post. I asked you over there to randomly pick a number between 1 and 4, and 3 easily won, so I went to my Spidey collection and randomly picked an issue to look at for a video from the 3rd level. I later posted the next day that the comic pulled was the Amazing Spider-Man issue 261. Now personally, I was very happy to see this comic picked. It's probably one of my most earliest Spidey comics I've ever gotten, and I used to be obsessed with the cover. I mean, it's just some beautiful work, and Charles Vess just nailed it. I wish I could have experienced it fresh off the shelf when it first released, but the memory of my kid self randomly seeing it at my local store and immediately gravitating towards it is still one of my favorite memories within my comic journey. And when it comes to this video and the approach I want to take, I thought to myself, since this issue is basically the conclusion of the last 3 ASM books, why not go over those few comics as best as possible so we can fully appreciate this story, because it genuinely is probably one of my most favorite battles of Spider-Man and the Hobgoblin. So join us today as we go over the Amazing Spider-Man issues 259, 260, and 261, The Challenge of the Hobgoblin. So for this first comic book, this in a way is a filler issue. It was used as an opportunity to finally tell us Mary Jane's traumatic childhood, as well as just more information about her family and why she becomes who she is. During this though, we'd have small moments of setup for the next 2 issues, so for this video I'll just be looking at those few pages. Now our tale begins in a seemingly innocent deserted train yard, yet when we take a closer look we're bound to find out something a little more riskier, so to speak. For these trains have been slowly and costly turned into one of the most classiest casinos within New York. But then, there's a sudden blast in the roof, and through that hole swoops a terrifying figure. The police may not know of this hidden setup, but nothing escapes the Hobgoblin. Hobgoblin targets the man running the business, Mr. Hudson, and makes his demands clear. He's well aware of Hudson's already very exclusive clientele with the likes of Wilson Fisk the Kingpin, but he wants in, 10% to be specific, or else he'll be back to make Mr. Hudson's life most unpleasant. Later on, just beyond Central Park, a small Upper West Side confectionery stands, and inside the busy store we see a suspicious worker going into the back to check on the boss. He asks how things are going. The boss is so far very thrilled with the afternoon tally and encourages everyone to place their bets before the next races. But then, just like before, without a moment's notice, the menacing Hobgoblin crashes through the window. The boss, Mr. Santelio, orders his men to kill their intruder before he wrecks the place completely. They all foolishly leap at the opportunity powered by their loyalty towards their boss, yet they all find out very soon that none can quite compare to the power of one such as the Hobgoblin. Santelio tries to run for it, but Hobgoblin isn't done with him just yet. Using his glider, he swiftly captures the boss of the racket, and just like before, he makes his demands known. He wants 10% of his weekly take. Santelio without hesitation agrees to whatever he says. With everything in order, Hobgoblin assures before leaving that he made the right decision, for the only alternative would have been his death. Afterwards, across town, the mysterious Rose is very pleased with the progress report from the Hobgoblin, for within a few weeks they will control all the major gambling interests in the city. I should probably mention that around this time when the Rose was first introduced within the Spidey books that he formed a partnership with the Hobgoblin and the two played a vital part in the gang war story, but that's a video for another day. My good mate Skull Ryan actually made a very good video on the subject of the Rose and Hobgoblin. I'll leave a link in case you wanted to watch it, but anyway, back to the story. Hobgoblin knew that his plan would be foolproof, for with the Rose's insider knowledge of the rackets mixed with his own power, nothing would be able to stop them. The Rose makes note of how the Kingpin will be anything but pleased when he learns of their new partnership. However, the Hobgoblin says they'll cross that bridge in all due time. For now, he's much more concerned with the matter of personal vengeance. He asks to borrow some guards, for he wants them to pay a business call on some old friends of his, Mr. and Mrs. Harry Osborn. A couple hours later, a certain Peter Parker is finally home after a day out with Mary Jane Watson. He plans to visit Aunt May that night to make peace between the two of them over their latest argument, revolving around Peter's choice of dropping out of college. He turns on the evening news whilst he changes, but fate had other ideas for Pete that night, for when the TV turns on it immediately catches his attention. A startling news report confirms his worst fears. The death-defying Hobgoblin has made his return. Of course, Peter never truly believed he died the last time the pair fought, and he's been waiting for this to happen. He can't waste a moment. It seems he has to put off seeing Aunt May for another night. He finds his classic red and blue suit. After the events of Secret Wars and later with the help of Reed removing the symbiote from his body, he hasn't been in all that much action. It's a sentimental moment for Peter. It's like welcoming home an old friend. He's always felt somewhat responsible for the creation of Hobgoblin. He's already killed a few people, and Peter swears he won't let that happen again. All his equipment from the spider signal to his camera to the old trusty web shooters seem to be in working order. I can't be too careful when it comes to the Hobgoblin. He's one of the most dangerous foes I've ever fought. He's got an arsenal of deadly weapons at his command. His super strength is nearly the equal of my own, and I've never met anyone half as cunning. He's always managed to fight me to a draw in the past. Not this time. He's not getting away from me again. I'm gonna fight him like I've never fought before, and I'm going to win. When I'm finished with him, the Hobgoblin's going to know he's been beaten. He's going to know what it means to face the power of Spider-Man. Aunt May stares out of the window with a saddened gaze. Arthur makes note of it and questions if it's about Peter, and he also suggests that she should call him. However, Aunt May is certain there's nothing to discuss, but he continues to push for answers. May sighs, and with deep sadness explains ever since Peter was a child he'd always dreamed of one day having a career in science. He owed it to himself to accomplish that dream. It was his responsibility to. But he quit. He dropped out, turned his back on his future. Arthur asked the question if she's been a little bit too harsh on the boy. Maybe she should listen to his side of the story. After all, things aren't always as they appear. He acknowledges that she feels hurt, betrayed even, but assures her that her nephew is better than that, and deep down she knows he is. And if there's one thing certain, he wouldn't hurt her for the world. Arthur continues, in fact, Peter's such a gentle boy, I seriously doubt that he would ever intentionally hurt anyone. Well, he was right for the most part anyway. Spider-Man is paying a very important visit to Santalio. He gives everyone a chance to surrender now before the pain really begins. But the crooks, they have other ideas. Spidey leaps down from the ceiling and takes them all on. He makes it look effortless. But then as the spectacular web spinner somersaults forward, a guard has his gun pointed right to his head. Even as the gunman's finger tightens around the trigger, Spider-Man regains his footing and then taps twice on a water-thin button hidden beneath the palm of his glove, but then, unexpectedly, his web shooter malfunctions, causing the web to solidify around his hand. He's now going to have to wait an hour for it to dissolve, but that doesn't mean he's just going to sit there and let the bullet hit him. He leaps out of the way and into the vicinity of the two goons, who are no match for the webhead. Another attacks. Spidey uses his trusty spider agility and counters by throwing the guard into the group of the others. He webs them all up to make sure no one can interfere. Santalio, scared to death, begins to run as Spider-Man chases after him, cracking jokes along the way. Using just his fingers, he stops Santalio dead in his tracks and begins questioning him. Just like the last issue, Santalio immediately folds, and he tells Spider-Man all the recent events of the underworld, including the schemes of the Rose and Hobgoblin. After getting all he needed, Spider-Man jumps out of the window and web swings around town. He begins to go over the recent events in his life. From not having the time to maintain his web shooters to the whole ordeal with the black suit to his rocky love life with Black Cat and even how she's been keeping some important secrets away from him, to him and May still not finding peace, to even him adjusting to the fact that MJ knows his secret identity, and lastly but how the menacing Hobgoblin has now teamed up with the Rose. Yep, our hero sure has a lot on his plate, and he knows it. Just like how he knows the Hobgoblin is his responsibility. He must put an end to all of this, yet how? Spidey stands upon a rooftop pondering where to begin. Well, elsewhere at that very moment, the Rose informs the Hobgoblin that all the necessary arrangements have been made and everything will proceed according to his plan. The orange and blue figure is very pleased and makes his way to begin step 1 of his scheme. As he flies off, one of the Rose's men asks how much longer they're going to have to put up with that maniac. The Rose tells him to be patient, for as outlandish the Hobgoblin may be, he is a most important ally, and with his aid the Rose shall slowly seize control of all the major gambling interests within the city. Their gang will soon grow in power and influence until he is a fit rival for the kingpin of crime himself. Only then will the Hobgoblin have served his purpose, and on that day, he shall die. But just then in Midtown Manhattan, Mary Jane Watson is late for her meeting with Liz and Harry. When she finally arrives, the three indulge in some small talk. We then discover that Liz is due any day now while a group of men watch from a short distance. Harry must be going to get some work done in the office, but he assures them he'll meet back up afterwards, so Liz and MJ head into the restaurant. Unbeknown to them that their every move is being carefully watched. Elsewhere, a very stressed Harry Osborn arrives at the Osborn manufacturing building. He's had a lot of recent worries that one of his father's only few worthwhile accomplishments could very well be coming to its end. For there is someone buying huge blocks of Osborn stock through a series of dummy companies. Harry feels it's his responsibility not only as a member of the board of directors, but also as the son of Norman Osborn to save the company. Harry is left at his desk looking at the file over and over again, puzzled by the whole thing. But then in an instant, the Hobgoblin comes crashing through with a vengeance. He wants Harry's father's journals and he wants them now. Harry tries to tell him that he has no clue what he's talking about, however the Hobgoblin doesn't buy it. He grabs Harry's suit and pulls him in closer. He informs of a trade offer. But then, all the Hobgoblin can let out is a measly oh no, as Spider-Man leaps through with a mean left hook to the jaw. The Hobgoblin attempts to counter with his trusty finger blast, however Spider-Man swiftly dodges these attacks. He turns to Harry and tells him to get to safety, yet it's no use. Harry is frozen with fear, which leaves Spidey with no choice but to try to direct this fight to somewhere else. Spider-Man suddenly springs forward and forces Hobgoblin through the door. The two are locked onto the glider, crashing through all the walls on the level until they finally reach the last room, the meeting area. Hobgoblin throws the arachnid off his back, but he's already prepared with an attack of his own. He uses the force from the throw to leap right back at him with a powerful kick. It sends the Hobgoblin and his glider flying straight into a chandelier. A frustrated Spidey must flee from the scene as fast as he can, for even the members within the meeting room are too scared to leave. Hobgoblin regains his clarity. He had no intention of fighting Spider-Man, but after what has happened here today, he swears that he will perish by his hand. Meanwhile, across town at the famous Daily Bugle, Betty Brand is trying to phone her husband Ned Leeds, yet he isn't picking up. Anne comes over to gossip about Jameson's 1 week-long honeymoon until the man himself interrupts. Robbie later goes over to Betty to ask if she's found a photographer for a story they discussed earlier, however she hasn't been able to reach either Peter or Lance Bannon. Now this whole scene, by the way, was meant to just add more fuel to the fire of the Hobgoblin's secret identity because at the time no one really knew for sure. We cut back to the battle taking place at the Osborn building. After continuous back and forth hits, the Hobgoblin knocks Spider-Man through to the ladies' room. Spidey throws another punch on Hobby and he lands right onto the toilet, and if you think he's embarrassed now, wait till you see this next part. So in a moment blinded by pure anger, the Hobgoblin grabs a famous pumpkin bomb to throw at Spider-Man, however with some quick thinking, Spidey webs the bomb to his hand, resulting in Hobgoblin having to douse the explosive in the toilet, and it's safe to say that he is pissed. Before he attempts to take off, he swears Spider-Man's death once more. He's already wasted too much valuable time, however, so he heads straight for the window. Spidey needs to get this right to not let the Hobgoblin escape him for another time. Unfortunately for our hero, he mistimes the leap, however all hope is not lost yet as he quickly shoots a web line onto the glider. Now he's flying through the streets of New York trying to dodge each building as they rush forward. He tries to shoot another web at his foe, however he anticipated the second attack and blasts the wall crawler, throwing him off his aim. Hobgoblin notices the perfect opportunity to be rid of the wall crawler. Using his own web line against him, he manages to throw Spidey right onto an oncoming train. He gloats as he flies away, for surely now he is finally free from his greatest enemy. But soon after, a weary Spider-Man climbs to the top of the train. Lucky for him, he managed to leap aboard in time, or else the Hobgoblin would have truly won. He sits up to regain some of his strength back and he begins to worry over Harry. He'd hate to see anything trigger his crazy side, for that's something he never wants to go through ever again. Back at the restaurant, Liz and MJ are starting to wonder what's taking Harry so long to get back. Mary Jane offers to walk Liz to his office, but before the two can leave, the car stalking from before pulls up to their side and the thugs kidnap the two women. Originally they were meant to just go after Liz, but MJ could prove useful for if Mrs. Osborn goes into labour. While this is happening, just down the street, Harry frantically tries to rush over to save his wife and friend. In his attempt, however, he is met with failure and the two drive off. Harry, slowly losing the plot, vows that if any harm befalls to his wife, the Hobgoblin will live to regret the day he ever heard of Harry Osborn, the son of the Green Goblin. It's a dark, cold, evil place, and Mary Jane with Liz Osborn are trapped within. The door creaks open to reveal the Hobgoblin. Mary Jane fearfully asks why has he brought them there. He grants her wish. He explains that they are but mere pawns for a business transaction between himself and Harry Osborn. Liz asks what business could her husband possibly have with someone like him. The Hobgoblin dismisses her inquiry and warns her to sit there and be quiet, because even if she isn't afraid for herself, she must remember the baby, for he could easily use his blaster to, in his own words, do the gene pool a favour and spare the world the birth of another mad Osborn. MJ's fear turns into anger over the way they're being treated. She rushes over at him foolishly, for all the Hobgoblin has to do is just push her away. Yet during that short interaction, something peculiar happened in relation to his identity, for he revealed he somehow knows Mary Jane's name. Moments later, our merciless foe and his partner, the Rose, converse about what's just taken place. He asks if the theatrics were really necessary. The Hobgoblin replies with, of course, it's all a part of the plan, so Harry will give him what he wants since he's certain the threats would be carried out. Tensions ever so slightly rise with the Hobgoblin asking what was the point of capturing Mary Jane as well. The Rose tells him to take another look at Liz. She could give birth at any second, and so considering none of his men know how to deliver a baby, it would be a great tragedy for Mrs. Osborn to die in childbirth. Shortly, the two walk to the newly refurbished office made for the Hobgoblin. The Rose is pleased that he's finally taken up the space. He feels it's best, especially for the partnership they've formed and the plans they have to seize control of all the major gambling interests within the city. The Rose continues. He wishes everything to work out just fine for his partner. He knows how important it all is to him. The Hobgoblin is confident that the win is already secured. He's meeting Harry soon, and he knows he's not the gambling type. He wouldn't dare risk the lives of his wife and unborn child. Meanwhile, elsewhere, a panicked Harry Osborn frantically searches for the remaining journals of his father. Every second feels like a ticking time bomb. Every box opened, every drawer searched, every book checked is all met with the same result: nothing. Harry slowly accepts defeat, cursing his father, blaming him for everything. But then, in a moment of despair, a flicker of hope begins to spark. He notices his father's old desk, one that's been passed down from generation to generation. He breaks it open and finds the secret compartment behind the wooden panel. 5 seconds is all Harry Osborn needs to smash through. And then, at last, finally, he possesses one of his father's long-lost journals. This one in particular is about his list of properties. These were sites that fell victim to break-ins which occurred roughly when the Hobgoblin first appeared. Harry infers that this book must be a master list of all his hiding places. Moments later, a cautious Harry Osborn makes his way to the meeting. He only wishes he could turn to someone for help. But who could he ask to put his life on the line in a situation like this? Little does he suspect that a certain Guardian Wallcrawler is watching his every move. Just then, the amazing Spider-Man swings over to follow Harry's car thanks to his trusty Spider Tracer. He frets about his longtime friend, the women hostage, and battling a foe like Hobgoblin. The entire situation plagues his mind. He must save them all before it's too late. Soon in Central Park, we see Harry Osborn patiently wait for the Hobgoblin to arrive. He's 20 minutes late. Maybe something went wrong, he wonders. But as soon as he finishes his thought, the man of the hour swoops by using his infamous Goblin glider. Him being late was only for precaution, as he checked to see if there were any uninvited guests. At first, the Hobgoblin isn't all that happy to only see one journal. Harry mentions it was the only one he could find, but it could very well be the most important one of all. The last entry is only dated a week before his father's death, and it contains a complete list of all his secret hideaways. This is enough to pique the Hobgoblin's interest, and he wants it now. But Harry requires to see Liz and Mary Jane first. The crazed hooded figure agrees, and with one simple blow he knocks Harry out cold. Before taking Osborn to see them, he quickly authenticates the journal as one of Norman's and then proceeds with the trade. Unbeknown to the pair that Spider-Man is hidden deep within the shadows, waiting for the right opportunity to strike. Sometime later at the Rose's warehouse, Harry is thrown into the room with Liz and MJ. They both rush to see if he's okay, but his mental health is quickly deteriorating as he feels like he's screwed things up once again. Mary Jane asks if Peter knows anything about this. A confused Harry replies with, of course not. Why would he involve him in this mess? Meanwhile, the web slinger is rushing over as fast as he possibly can. The Rose meets with his partner to go over tomorrow's agenda involving some more bookies who need to be persuaded to join their organization. But meanwhile, outside, a certain spider quickly disposes of 2 watchmen and swiftly moves on to the next. At that moment, Harry has finally had enough. He slowly built the courage to do something. He knew he couldn't trust someone like the Hobgoblin, so he brought along his father's gun. He can't let anything happen to the people he cares about. He bangs on the door to get one of the guards' attention and pulls his gun on him. The guard seems amused. He knows Harry is too weak to pull the trigger. He toys with him. He dares him. And Harry realizes he simply can't do it. But Mary Jane Watson took the chance to grab a shovel and whack the man on the back of the head, causing him to go out cold. Soon after, a deflated Harry tries to apologize over him not being able to shoot, but then, one of the Rose's men spots the group trying to escape and brings it to everyone's attention. Harry won't fail them this time and begins shooting the gun. The Rose and Hobgoblin are alerted by all the commotion. The orange and blue figure rushes to check what's happening out there, while his more stylish partner takes the wise option and makes his escape. Outside the warehouse, Spider-Man finishes dealing with the last watchman. When he hears the gunshots, he knows there's no more time to waste being subtle and rips the wooden door off its hinges. The Hobgoblin finds the hostages attempting to break out and condemns them to death. But finally, the amazing Spider-Man makes his presence known and intervenes before the crazed goblin can harm anyone. Hobgoblin tries to blast his foe, but Spidey jumps out of the way and lands a mean left hook. While the two battle it out, Harry, Liz and MJ all try to continue their escape. Mary Jane notices Osborn seems to be on the verge of a mental breakdown. They all rush to a door which seems to be the exit, but only to find everything that used to belong to the Green Goblin. Finally, at long last, Harry knows what has to be done. He forces the girls to leave. There's something he must do alone. Outside, however, tensions are on the rise. Spidey must dodge every attack with such precision that the Hobgoblin knows that he can't keep this up all day. He throws a pumpkin bomb at his foe. Spider-Man sees that it's going to miss him. The bomb directly hits the propane tanks, causing a massive explosion. Fire quickly engulfs the warehouse. The Hobgoblin retrieves Norman's journal and prepares to leave before the authorities arrive. But then, someone dares challenge the Hobgoblin. Harry Osborn, with the old weapons of his father, stands firm blocking the exit. He must now face the true advanced power of the Hobgoblin. Liz is distraught at what appears to be the end of her husband. Mary Jane tries to pull her away before the fire overtakes them, but their problems go from bad to worse. Liz stops. The pain is too much. It's the baby. She's going into labor, all the while the flames are slowly getting closer and closer. A dazed Spider-Man slowly regains his footing. He's quickly alerted once he hears Liz scream from across the warehouse. He's still a little groggy, but he must not let that stop him from saving the day. He finds the women. He asks where Harry is, and when they reply with finding the Hobgoblin, he's shocked to his core. He knows he's as good as dead if it goes on for any longer. He must help his best friend. He tells MJ to stay with Liz and sets off to save Harry. Just when the Hobgoblin is about to finally kill Osborn, the sensational Spider-Man swings in and kicks his foe off his glider. Spidey lands perfectly on the ground, tells Harry to go to his wife, and prepares for his next attack. I managed to catch him by surprise, but I can't give him a chance to recover. He's almost as strong as I am. I'll have to hit him with everything I've got. I've always felt partially to blame for the creation of the Hobgoblin. It's my responsibility to stop him, to make him pay for all the misery he's caused. He's not going to outsmart me this time. He's not going to get away. Not this time! Outside the room, Harry rushes to the women. They soon realize that without Spider-Man, there's no chance of escape. The fire is closing in. They haven't much time before they fall victim to the inferno. The Hobgoblin gives Spider-Man his ultimatum: prolong their battle and risk the lives of those outside that room surrounded by the flames, or let him go to save the Osborns and Miss Watson. For if Spidey were to web his foe to the nearest wall, the Hobgoblin would perish to the fire eventually. So what's it going to be, hero? Me or them? Asked the defeated Hobgoblin. Spider-Man knows what he must do. As much as he wants to continue beating the crap out of his enemy, as much as he wants to finally put an end to the madness one such as the Hobgoblin causes, he knows he must save his friends. Before making an escape of his own, Hobgoblin destroys any equipment the authorities may find. Now Spider-Man must act fast if he wants to get everyone out in one piece. Using his uncanny spider strength, he grabs a forklift and throws it through the wall, resulting in a massive opening. Luckily, the firefighters have just arrived, so Spider-Man rushes Liz out and gets an ambulance on the scene. As Harry and Liz leave, Mary Jane and Peter share a quiet moment reflecting on all their hardships and praying for the best. Elsewhere, Hobgoblin, all bruised and battered from his battle with Spider-Man, slowly makes his way to one of his secret hideouts. He knows he needs rest, but he finally has the chance to look through Norman's journal, the last legacy from the Green Goblin to him. But mere moments later, he throws the book with rage. It turns out all the locations listed were areas he had already stolen from. He suffered all that pain, all that humiliation, for nothing. It appears that he's already taken all he possibly could from Norman Osborn's legacy. He's now fully on his own, and he swears that once he returns, it will mark the end of his greatest enemy, the end of the Amazing Spider-Man. The 80s have got to be one of the most entertaining periods when it comes to Spider-Man comics. I mean, the entire decade was massive for the character, from his relationship with the Black Cat, to the entire symbiote saga leading into Venom's first appearance, to the death of Jean the Wolf, to his marriage with Mary Jane Watson, to Kraven's Last Hunt, and still somehow much more. Literally, I could keep going on and on with just so many good stories that filled this period of the books. It's a pretty legendary run with all considered, and so getting the chance to make a video on any of these stories is always a blast. Me personally, I'm a massive fan of the more lesser known street level characters like the Rose, and with that character came a lot of good stories including the Hobgoblin. Tom DeFalco was the pioneer of said characters for me, one because he co-created the Rose, and two because of this very story we looked at today. I love the intensity throughout these 3 issues. It builds up at such a good pace where everything just flows so well. I also enjoyed the way he built up Harry taking a stand to the Hobgoblin. To have him do so in a way that wasn't him going crazy and putting one of the spare suits on, but instead for him to try to be a hero as himself, as Harry Osborn, I just felt like it was some really good character development. Now the artwork in these comics are amazing. Frenz is easily one of my favourite artists for the Wallcrawler. Sure, from a distance his work may look simple, but I think he does it in a way that adds to its charm. Although when it comes to the more closer shots, they're simply fantastic. A great example is the splash page from issue 260. This shot of Aunt May staring out the window with this cold, depressed gaze is just so good. It radiates the energy and emotion right off the page. There's also some parts where it feels like Ron becomes an almost modern version of Steve Ditko. He even recreated the iconic imagery within these issues as well. Overall, when it comes to this short but sweet Hobgoblin story, I always know that when I pick up the comic, I'm going to be in for a fun read. This duo of DeFalco and Frenz is a seriously underrated force within Spider-Man comics. I feel like they both really complemented each other's work so well, and it resulted in some all-round amazing comic books. This story here took on a lot and managed to succeed. We got some insight into Peter's sense of responsibility with the whole matter, Harry's mental state slowly declining but resulting in a form of triumph, the high stakes of saving Mary Jane, Liz and her unborn child, and finally, Spider-Man being able to comfortably beat his foe in a fight which leaves the Hobgoblin more determined than ever to destroy his arch-nemesis. Now when it comes to the Amazing Spider-Man issues 259, 260 and 261, I see it as a must-read for any Spider-Man fan. A story for the ages. A Tom DeFalco and Frenz classic.